All right, so I started part of a recording, and obviously it does record. So we're going to play the whole thing for you guys, the entire thing. See, a lot of y'all want to treat me like I'm BSing you, like I'm lying to you, and things of that nature. Now, I do speak with a lot of emotion. I really do. But I'm also capable of having a civil conversation with somebody who is being civil, somebody who's not talking over me, somebody who's not making every excuse, somebody who, when I try to turn in the crimes against me, they're not going to do what Scott Costa did and say, well, is this something new? It better be something new. Or when I'm trying to tell him about the abuse, he keeps interrupting me. He probably interrupted me, I don't know, those of you who watched the video, how many times did he interrupt me in that to tell me, well, maybe we can't just go before a judge about opinions or that. Like, he's literally going out of his way to grossly reinterpret and play stupid. I'm trying to turn in my predators, and they told me they couldn't do anything about it. So I had to tell them, this is multiple occasions I have gone to them about Christopher Kurth and Robert Warnick, and I'm in there trying to explain it to them, and I have to tell them, all right, I don't want you to pursue them. I don't want you to press charges, because obviously they're not going to. What I want you to do is go talk to the guy, and that's in the recording. Like, they've already let me know loud and clear by this point, and this, by the way, is over a year before I was assaulted by this man, by this registered sex offender. They were well aware. They did everything they could to let me know that they weren't going to do anything, including threatening and harassing me if I tried to turn it in again. And there are a lot of situations where I had too much evidence on my devices to even record anything more. There's a lot more things I had to say, but my fucking phone is beeping. It's fucking blowing up at me. Those of you who know where that come from, it's blowing up at me. We're probably alive back in the day when they had pagers. This is ancient machinery by today's standards. It means that you're messaging someone over and 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 over. So we're 3 minutes into this video. Let's get started on my therapy session. Now, this is, like I said, the difference between a state doctor and your own private doctor is that a state doctor doesn't give a holy fucking goddamn what you have to say. He's not going to look up anything that you have to say. He's going to just assume that what he was told by the badges is true. Now, the lady who the recording here is with actually looked at some of the evidence. This is session 2 or 3. And there's a few other sessions that are recorded as well. I can't post them because they have private information like social security numbers and things like that, because, well, in order to get help from these places, you got to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork. Everything in triplicate. And somehow magically, I'm sure that if they tried to send their triplicate to the police would find some way to lose it. See, that's the thing about them dropping all the charges against me. They claimed they had all of this evidence that they literally had none of. And then they claimed that they lost all of the evidence and that the witnesses did not want to pursue. Obviously, they had already gotten what they wanted. They had painted me out to be a bad guy and use the media to do it. Here's what happens when you are charged with a crime in Chapel, Nebraska. It's on the radio and in the newspaper. Whether you are guilty or not doesn't matter. Do you think they bothered putting on the radio or in the newspaper that they had to drop the charges because there was literally zero evidence of me committing these crimes? Literally zero evidence. And my paperwork even says that. But they were able to prevent me from going to court or turning in or showing the evidence against Leslie Snell or Scott DaCosta or any of his deputies or Robert Warnick, the registered sex offender. It specifically states that his crimes were committed against a child. This man has multiple children that are at high risk of being molested. And he wanted to, just like Leslie Snell, pretend like he was afraid for his children after committing felonies. Train. So, screw it. Let's go to the very beginning and let's press play. And I'm gonna go about my fucking business while you guys are doing this. Sorry about the beginning. By the way, this lady took a look at the evidence, unlike the state doctors.
Good morning.
Good morning.
They kind of on a detour, clear, because they're working on that road there.
I had the same detour, so you're good.
Okay. What?
A lot of people got a bad habit. If they didn't go through it, then it didn't happen. I went through the same roundabout that they took you on, so it's all right.
So how far is Chapel for you?
29 miles.
29. Okay.
Yeah, when Tamara worked for Region 1, she used to actually come down and see me once a week. She'd go all the way to Chapel, pick me up, and bring me here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore.
No. So, 3 phones?
4.
4.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't have service on all of them, do you?
I don't. They're all full of evidence, though.
Evidence. So you make sure you take them with you.
Everywhere. Well, I charged them up so I could show stuff on them.
I don't know anybody in Border, Wyoming.
I got a lot of...
So, yeah, you have a lot of crap that's gone on with you and everything. Do you believe that there is any way you're going to be able to do anything with it?
Yes and no. Because of the term mentally ill, I can't do it by myself. But the other thing is that something's got to give. I can't just keep taking the abuse. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before I can actually take anybody to court over this.
And do you think you're going to find anybody that is going to represent you? Because attorneys are really shy about going up against law enforcement or big institutions.
I noticed that they're pretty much all of the agencies that I've called, they're supposed to help people like me with specifically these kind of situations. But
Right.
as you know, they don't work. There's most of the time you fall through the cracks. A lot of times you end up with someone who just simply doesn't want to do their job. They're just there for a paycheck. It's rare to find somebody who is actually interested. Like Tamara, for example. Tamara knew her job. She knew it as well as I needed her to anyway. I mean, I don't know what everybody else's opinion of her was, but she was great.
I was not very impressed with her.
Well, I was more impressed with her than Jen.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that I have to deal with because when all this situation happened, people didn't speak up. The people that I was going
trimmed
to
your grill?
I didn't. I took a shower before I came in.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Figured I'd show you this today. I ran out of clean clothes, so I'm wearing the uniform I got to wear in prison.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. They sent it with you.
They sent me to Scotts Bluff with it on, and then Scotts Bluff made me take it off, and then they gave it back when I left. So I guess I didn't get out of prison completely screwed over. At least I got a set of clothes at
There you go.
my pants in prison. But
so, do you feel that you need to pursue this legally to get some kind of closure? And at least I tried out of it.
Not just and I tried it. I can't take this abuse for the rest of my life.
No.
And something does have to be done about it. I can't just do nothing.
Let me make this be quiet now that I told my husband I made it.
You're good? There's the biggest problem is that officers, when Natalie was killed, assumed that I had done it. They committed a lot of crimes thinking, well, you know.
You were an easy, open, shut. Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Yep. And then when they actually found the guy who did it, that's when the real crimes, the major crimes started coming in. I mean, they'd already committed a few crimes before Natalie was killed. When they realized that I wasn't going to get hemmed up for a murder, they did everything that they could to, including committing felonies, to try to prevent me from turning them in for the crimes they committed. There's also the fact that I had to deal with, like, for example, Dula County. When I first started with Region 1 and with Nicole Peralta, it's because I was trying to get help stopping the abuse that I was having to go through. Now, the sheriff's department there and 2 state patrol officers took me to the Sydney Hospital on suicide watch. The Sydney Hospital held me less than 3 hours, let me go. They gave me the number for Region 1 and for Nicole Peralta, and that's how I got started with that. I explained to Nicole Peralta, as well as Tamara, what was going on with the situation, about the abuse that I was taking, about the threats against my life, about how I'm jumping through all of these hoops and I keep getting called mentally ill. So I just have to take the abuse. I'm not allowed to defend myself. So Tamara explained to me, all right, well, before we can do anything about that, we got to make sure that, you know, if you are disabled, we need to get you on disability, because as soon as we have you on disability, these crimes these people are committing against you
somewhat.
It's supposed to be protected. I have disability and had disability when she died, and it didn't make any difference because I had no representation. A lot of this stuff with Britney Spears, I'm sure you've had to hear about it, how she had a curator and the curator screwed her over. But then there's also the fact that there's people like me that don't have a curator or a guardian.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to.
Do you think you need a guardian?
I absolutely do. They keep using the term mentally ill loosely to associate with schizophrenia, and officers outright, literally the officers I was trying to turn in, told the hospitals that I was schizophrenic. When I tried to turn
you're
in,
schizophrenic. Are you on the spectrum? I think so. And you have depression.
Yeah.
And you have anxiety, more of this kind of situational type stuff, but you have it.
And that's something that, like, I've tried to express to people and be open about and teach people about, that it is a situational issue. A lot of people think, oh, well, if you're depressed, you need meds, and automatically that's what they jump to. And really, a lot of people need to get out of a bad situation. If a little girl is being raped by her dad, feeding her meds is not going to stop dad from raping her. It's not going to get her out of his house.
No.
It's more likely to lead to worse depression and cutting. Now, if it is a situation where, you know, you got the perfect wife, you got the perfect house, you got the perfect kids, everything is great in your life, you got a brand new Maserati in your garage, you've got millions of dollars in the bank, and you're still depressed, well, that's a chemical imbalance, and you might need meds.
Yes. The money doesn't always make things perfect, but okay, so I've been in the mental health and substance abuse world for 42 years, okay? Doesn't mean I know everything, but do you think, I mean, that you would get some level of relief and relaxation if you were able to, like, be out of Chapel? Like to be in Sydney or to be in Dalton or to be in Gurley?
It doesn't really matter where I'm at as long as there's a support network. I know people in Chapel that I can go and see, and that helps me with my anxiety, but there's only two of them, and one of them is a pretty bad alcoholic who's got issues with his alcoholic ex and a bunch of child abuse situations that he's not the abuser, but he's not able to do anything about it. So for me, there's that situation, and then there's a situation with the other guy that I'm friends with. He doesn't drink, he doesn't do a bunch of drugs or anything crazy like that, but he also is friends with some of my predators. So for me, going to see him is based on whether or not my predator's vehicles are outside of his house. If I'm in Sydney or Dalton, I can't see him at all. It'll be very difficult. But as far as housing goes, you know, I'm willing to move anywhere that I can get help.
Because I mean, just being there, I'm working with a person that lives in Chapel, and it seems like the sheriff has them on the radar. So he's driving by their house a lot. When they go to work, he follows them for 5 or 6 miles, you know. Knows when they come home from work and, you know, follows them till they pull into their, you know.
Yeah, they've been driving around the house I've been staying into. I there's a dog at the house, and he barks. He doesn't bark at every vehicle that goes by. He barks mostly at the ones that slow down or the ones that stop. And that, when you see the sheriff's, you know, vehicle driving by your house at 5 or 6 miles an hour, it does send off a flag that they're specifically driving by your house for a reason. And for me, I don't have to be just afraid of. Oh, I hate trains. I live right next door to the tracks, but with a lot of the situation with the police, when Natalie was killed, one of the police officers who assaulted me is Officer Waylon Lolatai. I think I showed you a part of the video last time I was here. Because of that,
Is he still on the force?
no, he has been. All right, I'm pausing this just for a moment. So far, this is the important part about witnesses. Now, obviously, this woman knows Jen Beatty in person. She knows Tamara in person. She literally knows these people. She has literally worked with these people. Now, what's the difference between this lady and the fucking nut jobs I had to see up there in the prison? That asshole at the prison didn't look at any evidence. He took the staff's word and the sheriff's word as if it were ordained by the Almighty himself and written in stone. This sheriff, and not just to me, has made more than one human being's life a living hell. Now, there's several other of these videos, and of course, I'm going to have to dig for them, but it's worth it. Now, I'd like to figure out how to do the bleepy thing so I can bleep out my social security number and bleep out my telephone number so that I don't end up with hundreds more restricted numbers calling me to harass me. Now, I've got many videos on this very YouTube where you can see, you can hear, you can verify that these are not figments of my imagination. That's the wonderful thing about technology. I can show the truth. Now, I got a question for you. Now, obviously, she's already stated that I am not schizophrenic. And of course, we're only, what, 12 minutes and 30 seconds into a 54-minute and 47-second conversation. She's already telling me about the local sheriff doing what he's been doing to me to other people. You also got to listen to the video where, well, I'm trying to get things worked out with my little sister, and that's something I'm going to bring up a little bit more about in another video. But then the cops are over here, they're smacking on the door, and they were here for a good half hour smacking on the door. At least 15 minutes. Half an hour might be an exaggeration. Might be. Now, Jen Beebe is now a jail guard at the very same jail that she had come to, supposing to do what this woman here did. This woman here also came to the Scottsbluff jail to see me and to visit with me, and we had more than one session there. There's also the fact that, like, if you need to see those people while you're incarcerated, you fill out the little thing, and they're supposed to put her on the schedule. And on multiple occasions, even though it was written up that I was supposed to be on the schedule, they didn't allow it. Now, Jen Beebe was the source of me being abused. Now, there's also a lady there named Lauderdale. Lauderdale was one of my abusers in the Scottsbluff jail. She also knows my niece's father, Riley. She's friends with him. She used to live next door with him. After she did what she did, she actually came to me and she not only apologized and told me, hey, I was having a bad day and I shouldn't have taken it out on you. She also took the time to talk to me like I was a human being, and she even bought, with her own money, several books for me to read while I was in there to apologize for what she had done. You know what she had done? She tried to break off my fucking fingers. One of them might have been broken. I don't know. At the same time, like, it's not the physical abuse that is necessarily the problem. It is the mentality that leads to that abuse. And those folks' belief that they're going to get away with it. And it's not just a belief, it's the truth. Without audio and video recording devices on at all points in time, they can do whatever they want. If it's just video, they can antagonize the situation and get away with it, and they get to sell their own narrative about what's happening in the video. They'll get heard, you won't. Let's get back to the video. Released because he couldn't stop assaulting homeless people. Tony Kovaleski of Denver 7 News did a special on him because of the abuse. But I was the first one that he abused in Boulder, Colorado, and they pretended like I didn't exist. When I contacted them about it, they were extremely rude. I'm not sure if law about the news back in the day where the news had to report both sides of a story. The reason for this is because they were often selling false narratives, and those false narratives were getting a lot of innocent people killed, like literally killed, not figuratively. So they made a law to prevent that. The problem is in 1997, they rescinded that law. It no longer exists. Now the reason that they made that law is because we didn't really have actual news back then. What we had was basically the equivalent of tabloids. And now we can see how our news and our media is going into recession and regressing back to being tabloids again. And the problem with that is that they did create a situation for me where I am victimized often. I'm not allowed to defend myself because of the mental ill tag, and that's where they keep pushing the, police officers telling people that I was schizophrenic. Not doctors, police were telling nurses in these places that I was schizophrenic. I was trying to turn in Amanda Jonas. She had me put into the hospital. They claimed that when I got to the hospital, I was going to be allowed to make a report. Well, when I got to the hospital, the officers all left. They left me with a security guard. They left me in a room, and then they did a lot of really messed up stuff while I was in that room based on the fact that they were told that I was schizophrenic. Meanwhile, I had a backpack full of evidence that I had been trying to show, and I'm like, hey, you guys have my backpack right there. You guys can look in the backpack. It's full of evidence. I'm telling the truth. I am literally in here because I was trying to turn in bad cops. Now, she obviously had told the hospital that I was schizophrenic, and they wrote that down on my paperwork, but they didn't write it down as a diagnosis from a doctor. There was no psychologist and no psychiatrist. Those are the only two people in the United States who can diagnose somebody as schizophrenic.
I can't.
You're a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
No, I'm an LI, so I can diagnose. But you're not schizophrenic, Sean. So, the law, the rules have changed probably within the last 10 years where licensed independent mental health practitioners can diagnose.
LIMHP, and that's one of the things that I'm having to look at the difference between somebody like you or somebody who was tainted by the cops. And here's the whole thing with that is that a lot of people don't understand what being tainted by the cops is. Scott DaCosta, I was trying to turn him in, and that's where all of this situation happened.
Oh, yeah.
And so he called up these other departments, the Sydney Police Department and the Garden County Sheriff's Department and the Sydney Sheriff's Department, and got a hold of all these different departments and told them all I'm schizophrenic. Then, because according to the whole situation, Scott DaCosta, the very man I was trying to turn in, got to be in charge of all of my transportation, where I was sent to. They had already decided that they were going to send me to Lincoln before they even arrested me. And the thing is, when I got up there, I had to go to Garden County Jail first, and then Garden County Jail, I was taken to the hospital because I passed out. Now, when I got to the hospital, the nurse was acting funny, and it was kind of weirding me out. And I was like, all right, there's a pretty weird vibe I'm getting off this lady. I'm trying to explain to her what's going on, but I'm pretty out of it. I haven't gotten a whole lot of sleep. I literally got a hematoma on the ride from the jail to the hospital, and I'm like, what's going on here? I haven't seen a doctor. The nurse explains to me that it's just that she's the head charge nurse, and there's no doctors there at that time of day. And then she's asking me if I'm schizophrenic. Now, then the officer comes in, and basically what happened is she had been on the phone with Scott DaCosta. Scott DaCosta told her I was schizophrenic. When they transferred me to Lincoln, as soon as I got to Lincoln, I got to deal with the fact that it says schizophrenic behavior. Everybody who works there at the DEC, which is where they classify.
Diagnostic and Evaluation Center.
Yes, ma'am. And a lot of people thought that was a mental hospital. It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
So,
it's a warehouse.
It is.
So, because you got labeled schizophrenic behaviors, anything that you had in their backpack, they probably thought was just schizophrenic garbage.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Sheriff Scott DaCosta being the guy who was in charge of all this, is that when I got there, I did get to see licensed independent mental health professional, LIMHP. And the problem is that she had that same piece of paper that had my name on it and says schizophrenic behaviors on it. And that all came from Scott DaCosta. Anytime that I had to try to do something, the problem is that Scott DaCosta and his coworkers made sure that they illegally prevented me from going to court dates. One of his employees, who had been involved in multiple situations, claimed that she hadn't been involved in multiple situations, even though her name was all over my paperwork. She also tried pretending that I was threatening her children, which, why would I threaten her children? I did have an issue with her, but that's specifically with her. So they made sure that you only have 10 days to do something about a situation like that with a protection order. Well, they wouldn't let me use the phone in Lincoln. So the 10 days expired before I was able to do anything. And meanwhile, every professional that I'm meeting there, they've already listened to Scott DaCosta. The day that I got there, they already had it written down, Sean Schwartz, um, schizophrenic behaviors. And from then on in, they treated me like I was schizophrenic for probably the first 2.5 weeks that I was there. Then, when they transferred me to LCC, Lincoln Correctional Center, which was literally right next door, I got to see Dr. Ted Hill. Well, Ted Hill said, "You're not schizophrenic. I don't know why they're telling us that you're schizophrenic. You're not schizophrenic." The other thing is, I am not sure if you're bipolar. I'm on the, because there was a couple instances that happened before he had actually spoken with me.
Sure.
And because those instances happened and he walked in on the middle of it, he wasn't sure how to take it. But according to him, I'm not, what's the word? It starts with a D. Not demented, delusional.
Yeah.
He said, "You're not delusional. You're not schizophrenic.
Not
You might
psychotic.
be definitely not psychotic." But he said, you might be bipolar. I don't know if you are or not.
I mean, your sleep patterns, but some of that could be situational too.
It is. I didn't have these sleep problems before Natalie was killed. Well, I had sleep problems before Natalie was killed, but I didn't have sleep problems until the situation with Natalie happened. Prior to that, I slept pretty good. There was a situation after I hurt my back in 2005 where I was homeless in Boulder, Colorado. I couldn't walk a block. I had to carry my backpack with me. All right, I'm going to pause. I did not mean to give her misinformation. I didn't hurt my back in 2005. I hurt it in 2015 on my birthday. Me everywhere. Everybody was stealing my stuff, and I couldn't go to sleep. I was stuck on that same block, and every night the cops would come by and harass me and tell me, "You can't sleep here. You can't stay here. You have to move on. If you don't get up and move, we're gonna give you a ticket. We're gonna haul you off," and things of that nature. And for about a year after I hurt my back, I averaged maybe an hour of sleep a night.
Well, and that's again situational. I mean, you don't dare go to sleep too deep or something.
When I say it, it sounds crazy, but when a professional says it, maybe you'll listen. Maybe. But probably not. You'll probably still make excuses.
He's gonna slit your throat and take your shit.
And they do too. I mean, they usually don't slit your throat, but they will take your stuff.
I had a guy I worked with who moved to Denver and ended up being homeless, and they slit his throat for his Air Jordan shoes.
That was
He didn't die.
97, right? 97 or 98.
Could be. I can't remember. I haven't seen him for a long time.
I remember seeing something like that on the news, but it was when I was still in high school, so it would have been a long time ago.
Yeah. So this whole process that you're doing and attempting to find anybody to assist you, have you found anybody? Have you called the Nebraska Advocacy?
I've called about everybody that there is to call, but if there's a new Nebraska advocacy place that I can call, I will certainly write their number down and give them a call. A lot of these places, basically, I get blown off. Um, I get the you're a male treatment, or I get the mentally ill treatment. Um, a lot of them told me that it's not their job to do these things, and then they gave me numbers for other places. Like, for example, Nebraska Attorney General's office told me I had to go to the FBI. FBI said it's not their job, that it's Nebraska State Patrol's job. So I got a hold of Nebraska State Patrol. They said that it's not their job, that it's the FBI's job, and that I had to call the Nebraska Attorney General's office. I explained to them that I'd already done that, but they said that's the only way to do it. So I called the Nebraska Attorney General's office again, and they tell me that I got to get a hold of the Nebraska State Patrol if the FBI won't do it. Nebraska State Patrol finally tells me this year that they're not allowed to investigate, which they kept on telling me that it's not their job, it's not their job. But according to the Nebraska Attorney General's office, it is their job. So then finally, just this month, they told me, all right, well, it is our job to investigate, but we're not allowed to investigate. We basically tell the Nebraska Attorney General's office what's going on, and then they decide if they're going to investigate it. And I said, well, how do they decide that they're going to investigate it if you guys aren't collecting any evidence and aren't? I suppose I should pause here. Just like the video that I'm playing, I told stories that were true. I also saved the evidence. So the things that I told you happen in these meetings, you're getting to hear it for yourselves now. Now, a couple of the computers that I have are completely full of evidence. This one right here, I can't even get it to work. It worked before the police got a hold of it, but somehow, magically, after Sheriff Scott DaCosta had it in his custody for 7 months while I was incarcerated. Meanwhile, obviously, between the conversations with me and Sergeant Jones, they were going to come and take a look at this evidence. I was trying to find a safe place away from Robert Warnick, a safe place away from Scott DaCosta. But Scott DaCosta is a crooked cop. And all he's got to do is call up his other crooked cop buddies and let do exactly what he wants. Matter of fact, one of the Cheyenne County deputies, while I was in the hospital on the 16th of December of 2019, after being assaulted by Scott DaCosta, one of the Dual County deputies had my prescription for antibiotics. They had to lance my backside to get rid of the infection, to squeeze it out of my body, and then I needed antibiotics. Well, that Dual County deputy intentionally dropped my prescription for antibiotics. So one of the Cheyenne County deputies picks it up and hands it to him. And then that deputy lost it again. So I had to go back to the hospital to get the stuff for the prescription. By that time, it was already too late. You know? I mean, it was pretty much useless to have antibiotics that late in it. It had already scarred over. It was already healed up as it was going to get. But I was trying to make sure that all of this information, all of this evidence against the Dual County Sheriff's Department and their deputies went into the right hands, the people who are supposed to investigate it. It never went to those hands. Scott DaCosta and his goons outright lied, manufactured lies in order to remove this evidence so that they could prevent it from getting into the hands that it needs to go to. And my autism advocate was trying to help me to do that. And she's afraid to come forward about that. Thousands of recordings. You know, in my paperwork, Scott DeCosta admits to putting his nasty cockbeaters on me. But when I made phone calls about that and got a hold of one of his deputies, a female deputy, what did she do? She claimed that she saw the videos and Scott DeCosta never touched me. Holy fuck, you lying bitch. Are you fucking kidding me? Scott DeCosta admitted to putting his nasty cockbeaters on me, lady. You gonna lie to me and pretend that you saw a video? Show me the video. Show that fucking video in court. And why is it that they dropped the charges? Because all of the shit that they said was a bunch of fucking lies. Preventative maintenance. All of this could have been avoided by just one friend actually caring, not blowing smoke up my ass, not filling me with bullshit. Just one friend who cared enough not to blow me off. Just one. Now, before Natalie disappeared, Miss Peaches could have looked at the evidence and gone in to talk to the police with me for my safety. These police officers know that when they have you alone, they can do whatever they want. And you have to jump through 400 years of bullshit if you have money so that you can hire a lawyer to get that information. Meanwhile, the news just asks for it, pays some money, and they get what they want. You're not allowed to record in the courtroom. You're not allowed to show the truth or record the truth of what happens in court. But a news team can buy your rights away. These people who want to be mad at me for this, you had no problems when it happened to me. You had no problems with it. So let's get back to the magic button, play.
Allowed to investigate it. And they said, oh, well, we're supposed to do an investigation. I'm like, see, that's the thing, is you've been telling me you can't investigate this whole time. You're telling me you can't do anything unless the Nebraska Attorney General's office says to.
Okay, so this is called disability rights.
Oh, God, I've called them already. I'll take their number again, though.
No, I mean, so it's the 402 474 402
402 474
3183.
3183.
Yeah, now there is another one. Let me.
These ones right here are full of evidence. That's part of why I brought them. The situation with my phones, it's not that I want to buy 400 new phones. It's that these are all prepaid phones because I can't afford to get an $800 phone and $1,100 worth of contract fees a year. I just simply can't afford it. So when I have to get a new phone, I buy one of the cheap ones at Walmart. And then if, like, say they incarcerate me for 7 months like they did this year to me, when I get out of jail, my number has already been given away. Somebody else has my phone number. So I can't use that phone anymore. And if I reset the phone, then I lose all of that evidence.
Okay, so have you called the Nebraska Crime Commission?
That sounds familiar, but I'm
It's
almost
Nebraska
certain I haven't
Victim
called them.
Nebraska Victim Advocacy Program.
Nebraska.
Victim Advocacy Program.
See, that's something that I was supposed to have at the very beginning, but
And
they kept
it's
denying me.
Julie Geis. Geise.
All right, I'm going to pause it here just to explain that although she's giving me these numbers, I have to have someone call with me or it gets absolutely nowhere. Nowhere at all. Another thing is, like, it takes a lot of calling, a lot of it, especially when it's just you. You're going to get the runaround. You're literally not going to get help. You just get the runaround over and over, over and over, over and over. And you say, Sean, why do you keep repeating yourself? Because these same things keep happening over and over, over and over, over and over.
It's 402 429 1609.
I'm going to check my phone here. Most of those numbers, when I called them, they'll be in one of these three phones. But
You notice it's a lot different when I'm actually being listened to, when I'm not being talked over or being told I just need to man up. Now, the thing is, she's doing the same thing a lot of other people are doing. She spends a lot of time trying to convince me to move to where? I mean, I've been going through this agency for a little over 3 months. We've been trying to get housing literally that entire 3 months. We have gotten nowhere in the last 3 months. It's not that we're not trying. But the thing is, the longer it goes, the more abuse happens, the more phone calls need to be made. Before Natalie died, I just needed one person to help me turn in these predators so that I wouldn't get blown off by the cops, so that I wouldn't be ignored and told I just need to man up. That is sexism. Any officer who tells you you need to man up, you turn him in and you make sure his sexist ass is fired. If you want to tell me sexism will not be tolerated, then prove it. When there is sexism towards men, you need to fight that just as hard as when it happens to women, or you are a sexist POS. Now, obviously, I'm trying to let this lady know what's going on. She's pretty receptive. She's already looked at some of the evidence. She knows I'm not BSing her. She seems to know things about small towns that would lead me to believe she's lived in a small town. Whew. All right, continue.
I'm almost certain that I've called disability rights from this phone. So I'm going to check it just by dialing the number and seeing if it comes up. Nope, I have not called them from this phone. All right, that's good to know.
And I don't know, I mean, those are just some of the numbers that I know. The Nebraska Advocacy, I haven't had very much good luck with them. They're supposed to have attorneys on board with them.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest issues is that a lot of these places, they get government funding for these things that they're supposed to be doing. But then when you call them, you realize that there's always some reason they can't.
And then you've used legal aid, I'm sure.
I've tried. The problem with legal aid, they did finally got back to me. They told me that they couldn't investigate the crimes against me. It's not their job. But there was, out of the thousands of crimes, and it has been thousands, you don't get to be on the news like I was and not have people be predatory towards you. And it's not like there's 1,000 people out there that, are constantly assaulting me or anything crazy like that.
No.
It's the fact that I have to be afraid to go outside because so many people have. A lot of those people only do so across the internet, but
You never know when somebody's going to be brave enough to come and park across the street. Now,
that's true. And that's the point that I've been making, is that my predators are all close enough that they could easily make a day trip up here, harm me and the other people that they threaten to hurt. They could easily come up here, they could harm me, they could harm my sister, and they could go right back to Colorado and be back in time to go
under
to
the
work.
radar.
Yep. And I get that there's, sorry about that. I've had these, they died from not being used for a while, so I charged them all up yesterday and forgot the alarms were on.
So, okay, even if you find someone who assists you, your chances of winning in small town Nebraska, where DaCosta is going to be hiding behind his badge and stuff,
It's next to nothing. I'm aware of that.
Republican state,
Yep.
conservative.
Well, I'm not his only victim. He's threatened and harassed multiple people, and I've recorded conversations with the people that I know that prove it.
But are they going to step up and say, yeah, he did the same thing to me? Because they got to live in Chapel, Nebraska.
And that's something that I've been trying to explain to. Rory Jetson was going to speak up. He ended up having a heart attack. There's a lot of my witnesses that ended up dead. I was nowhere near any of them when they died, so I mean, it's not like they can try to peg those on.
Right.
The one that
I
landed in
also
Amanda's
don't have access to those people or their
information anymore.
Right.
Well, and it's, and the thing is, unless they are upstanding, and I'm not trying to be, don't do anything, Sean,
You're being realistic.
I'm being realistic, and that I'm a straight shooter, and I'm not going to bullshit you, okay? Or sugarcoat. Doesn't do anybody any good.
Exactly.
Neither do I.
It's my mom is 95, and I told her, Mom, you are at the end of your life. That's why you're tired all the time. That's why you're this. And she's like, well, that's kind of blunt. And I said, what do you want me to do? You're going to live forever? Yeah, you're immortal. I said, no, you're not.
And see, that's one of the things I got in trouble for, is saying that we're all going to die. They grossly reinterpret that as I'm going to kill you, which obviously is not the same thing.
So, unless you have an upstanding citizen that has never been in trouble, they're going to go, yeah, he's an alcoholic, or he's a drug addict, or he's this, or he's that.
Yep.
You know that. Okay.
And the thing is that everything that they've done, all of the laws that they've broken, the way that they've gotten away with it is by calling me schizophrenic, claiming that I'm schizophrenic, and telling the hospitals I'm schizophrenic, telling the judge that I'm schizophrenic, telling the county attorney that I'm schizophrenic.
He's incompetent, schizophrenic. He's on disability, but you're not on disability for schizophrenia, are you?
I'm not.
You're on for autism or Asperger's or something.
Yep.
And a bad back.
Yep. So that's the thing. I mean, the term mentally ill is used loosely, in these situations, and that's how it started, was them using.
Now we're going to pause this. You know what all of this started over? I had a medical emergency while I was in Virginia. That medical emergency was severe dehydration. I got a little thing down here. It says free up storage space, your computer on storage space, visit storage settings to free some up. Now, I was thinking about for a moment here, going through and again for probably the 10th time on my channel, showing you the messages between Natalie and Alicia and I during that point in time on Facebook and in our messages on the phone. This whole time I was supposedly stalking them. They're making plans with me. They're wanting to do things with me. They're saying, we need to do this, let's do that, and so on and so forth. They're telling me that they love me and telling me that they want me to come have lunch with them, or their bosses are having a boss meeting, but after the boss meeting, they're going to come out. Alicia Bollinger called me almost every time she went out for a cigarette break while she worked at the cricket store. This is where I supposedly had stalked Natalie and stayed behind her work. A lot of people want to pretend like this happened in Colorado the year that she died. No, this was a whole year before, over a year before. And whose idea was it for me to stay behind the cricket store that Natalie no longer worked at? That's right, it was Alicia Bollinger's idea. Her boyfriend worked in the same building 2 doors down at Starbucks. She was like, hey, you know, you're at the Starbucks on Military Highway. You should come down to the Starbucks by the Chesapeake Mall where I work right next door. My boyfriend works there. Nobody's going to give you any problems there. She going to admit that? No. All right, we'll continue though.
Using the term mentally ill loosely.
Schizophrenic behaviors.
So that's right.
Yeah. So they right away got you pegged as he's crazy.
Yep.
He's a lunatic.
And that's what
He's
they told people
rambling
on the news.
about all this stuff.
Yes, and see, that's the thing about when I was younger, they called it going manic. When you have been through so much stress that you just blurt it all out at once, and then it's incomprehensible because there's so much going on, you bottled up, and it all comes out. But then I learned later on that's not manic.
Well, and
it's a part of me. You know?
Well, your PTSD mimics bipolar a lot because you're hypervigilant. You're making sure when you walk out the door, nobody's across the street. You're making sure everything's secure at night.
Yep.
You're almost afraid to go into a deep sleep because what if somebody comes? What's this? So your PTSD, starting back from childhood on, is mimicking a lot of bipolar symptoms. So, and it's the depression and the anxiety. So I'm going to diagnose you with post-traumatic stress disorder.
I'm going to pause that. The only thing that's funny, because I had already been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder several times. So, she's given me a diagnosis that I've already been diagnosed with. So, I mean, she's on the right page. It's not like it's not obvious to more than one person. Now, the doctors that I got to see, the doctors that I got to see regularly while I was at the prison, there's like 3 of them. And not necessarily regularly, but I got to speak with them. They got to get to know me. But then the state doctor that they had, first of all, he met with me for less than an hour and went out of his way to literally go out of his way to ignore everything I was saying and pretend everything I was saying was crazy. Like one of the things that I told him that, well, those of you who are actively on YouTube would understand this, but this guy is like 90 fucking years old. This guy's got a thick German accent. And of course, he claimed I was mentally incompetent based on a bunch of bullshit from Scott DaCosta and Scott DaCosta lying to people and those people assuming that because he's got truth. Literally, the guy that I was trying to turn into the Nebraska State Patrol and had it set up with Sergeant Jones to do so, and safety issues in Chapel, Nebraska, between Leslie Snell and Scott DaCosta and his deputies and Robert Warnick made it so that it was extremely. By this time, I'd already been assaulted by Scott DaCosta and a state trooper. So, I mean, it's not an easy thing for me to deal with. Now, we were able to get me out of town. We were able to get me to a hotel where we thought we were going to be safe, but I knew that I had to be paranoid. I was afraid that if I had the dude who I'm staying with now, it's his car that I had at the time. He let me borrow it so that I could go up there and be safe. And I was afraid that they were going to see his car out there and they were going to come pull some BS. And sure enough, that is literally what they did. And then they come in and they want to serve me a warrant when I'm no longer there. I've already been arrested on trumped up charges. All of the evidence is on YouTube. There is enough evidence just on YouTube to convict Scott DaCosta for the rest of his life, literally. Now, then there's stuff that the evidence on YouTube doesn't really mean a whole heck of a lot without all of the evidence. Because you get to hear them tell me one thing on YouTube, but then they tell me another thing, and I got to get the evidence of that other thing that's on their body cameras in order to prove the truth. Meanwhile, I can't do that because I don't have an attorney and I have nobody to actually look at the evidence and back me up. There are people that I sent literally thousands of pieces of evidence to because they claimed they were going to help, like Mandy Hughes. And what did she do? Well, she didn't like the fact that the truth was up on the internet. So she went to my predator, Scott DaCosta. That is a very common tactic. When these people get busted, outright lying and bullshitting, they go to my predators in law enforcement for help. And then there's situations like the situation with Rihanna. They wanted to give us a protection order. And guess what? Brianna didn't follow the protection order, and neither did I. We still spoke to each other. There's a recording with her on this very YouTube channel where she explains that she did the fucked up shit that she did because she was mad at me. They did that in order to prevent the truth from coming out. Those officers in Wyoming were just as cruel. And the recording with them is also on here. And just like Scott DaCosta, they did everything to prevent me from having the evidence to show what they had done. And they weren't going to allow me to have that evidence. And what evidence is that? This is the computer that I recorded the way that they treated me on. They were extremely hostile. And I was afraid that they were going to assault me or fucking shoot me because of the way that they were treating me. And then I had to literally plead guilty to some bullshit that I didn't do. And Rihanna admits in that video that I did not do, but I had to plead guilty to it so that I could get this piece of evidence. How fucked up is that? I also lost my vehicle. Rihanna was not happy about that. We're going to get back to press and play. It's 33 minutes and 23 seconds in, and it's a total of 54 minutes and 47 seconds long.
Here's my question. You have a lot of evidence. You have had a lot of shit hit you. People, be predators against you. Do you feel you have to pursue this?
I do.
Okay,
It's not something that I want to pursue. It's the fact that it has affected so much of my life that I can't get my life back.
what do you want out of it?
I know I'm not going to get back everything that was taken,
No.
but what I want to have is to be able to go see my loved ones in Colorado without being abused. I want to be able to go to the police if I have an issue and not be treated like I'm some sort of a monster.
Or leper, yeah. Or
Um,
crazy.
or crazy, exactly.
No, it's just Sean, he's crazy. Yeah, man.
And that's the problem. Like the way that I'm talking to you right now, when I talk to people before Natalie died about my problems, most of the time I talk to them like this, and I got blown off, and I got blown off, and I got blown off. When I was literally screaming for help, people treated me like I was some sort of a horrible person because I was literally screaming for help. Um, really, what I need to get out of this is the ability to have a safe environment
To move freely around and not have to look over your shoulder.
Well, that's always going to be there
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the way that it was exposed out there and the way that they tried to paint it. I'll always have to deal with those predators and always have to look over my shoulder. But my predators, I want them in jail. I want them to have consequences for their actions, not as a punishment, but as the example.
You are not God. You can't do this to people.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I know that I'm not God and I can't make people do their jobs. I can't make the sheriff go, all right, well, I screwed up. But I also have a lot of recordings with that sheriff where he admitted that both he and his deputies had screwed up. The fact that all of their cases in Colorado and Nebraska, like this has been going on for a while. Natalie was killed in 2017 in December, and this has been going on since a year before she was killed. So there was a point to that.
Do they know why she was killed?
Yeah, she asked Joseph Michael Lopez to shoot her in the head 2 weeks after I exposed her dad for raping her with her email. She wanted to die because her family was treating her like crap. They were trying to have her put in prison, and her boyfriend at the
Got
time
evidence of
was,
that too.
well, the guy who shot her in the head. He cited her boyfriend as the biggest reason that Natalie wanted to die.
I got evidence of that too.
Her boyfriend, Natalie was a heroin addict. Her boyfriend had heroin.
Got evidence
He
of that
kept on
too.
feeding her heroin. It was actually her boyfriend's gun she was shot with.
Got evidence of that
It was a
too.
9mm Glock, and she was shot from 6 to 15 inches away from her head while she was on her knees at McIntosh Dairy outside of Thornton, Colorado.
I got evidence of all of that too.
There was a lot of groups that were made about it, and they were supposed to be Natalie Justice groups. They ended up being Sean Schwartz hate groups.
I got evidence of that
The
too.
thing that I want to get out of this is I want those predators to be locked up so that, number one, they realize they can't just do these things with impunity. Number two, if they're locked up, they can't hurt me. They can't hurt my little sister. They can't hurt my niece. They can't hurt any of these people that they threaten to hurt. The other thing is, obviously, if they're willing to do this to me, they're willing to do it to others. That's the thing with Clearview, for example. I told on the things that they did to me at Clearview Behavioral Health, which I was sent to because I was trying to turn in Waylon Lolatai. When I tried to turn in Waylon Lolatai, obviously they shipped me out of jurisdiction. I can't turn him in. That's why I was sent to Clearview. Clearview was famous for police officers across the state sending people specifically to Clearview who were trying to tell on them. Clearview is not a mental hospital, it's a behavioral health unit, which means that the people who are there don't have to have any accredited anything from the state.
And you're
Let's pause this. I can forgive you your your ignorance if you can forgive me for trying to educate you. When I say it, you call me crazy. When I tell you what the laws are that harm us, you call me crazy. But then when an officer says that, you ignore it. When a Mental health care professional says it, you ignore it. Lovely. All right, we'll continue.
Locked in there, so they can do whatever the hell they want to you.
Exactly, including assault you and inject drugs into you, and then somehow magically lose half of the
Wow.
recorded evidence. You know,
Of course.
and that's the thing with. I told on Waylon Lolatai, and Waylon Lolatai, because I wasn't heard, assaulted 6 other people that year and was on Denver 7 Tony Kovaleski. I was transferred to Clearview, and I told on them about the assaults, about how the people there were basically 7-Eleven rejects. They picked these folks up off the street. They didn't know the first thing about what they were doing, and the doctor was never there. I mean, he was taking his word, medical professional word, he was taking from people who are not medical professionals. So then there's also the fact that I was drugged there because I was trying to tell on the police and I was trying to call 911. Later on, they killed Tibor Hatay doing that at that very facility.
So, okay,
I know.
chances of anything coming of this is maybe about 10%. Okay. At what point do you say, I gotta lock it up, put it in a box, and move forward?
Well, I did that in 2016 when I left Virginia. I went, you know what? This situation is beyond me. Those girls are on heroin. They can't stay off the drugs. They're hanging out with dangerous people, and I got to go. I left. I came all the way to Boulder. While I was in Boulder, Colorado, my very first day there, I've got people threatening me and harassing me. So I left Boulder. That was my only place that I've ever lived where I wasn't treated like crap for being different. There, I was allowed to be who I actually am. But I was being threatened and harassed and having people slap me and push me. So I came up to Chapel, Nebraska. Chapel, Nebraska, a lot of people in Chapel, they're different from the ones in Colorado. In Chapel, Nebraska, almost everybody is depressed all the time unless you're one of the good-looking people who are always popular. And that's a difficult thing to explain to people who haven't grown up in small towns, who have never lived in them.
How big is Chapel?
About 500 people.
I grew up in a town of 701.
So you know.
I grew up on a farm, but yeah, I know, a small town mentality.
And that's a lot of what I'm still having to deal with. A lot of my friends, they knew what was going on, they were aware of what was going on, but they never came forward.
Do you know why?
Because they're scared.
Because if it's focused on you, they're leaving them alone.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's just how it is.
She's
a
not
lot
dumb.
of my friends were threatened, harassed, and
She is
intimidated
highly
by
intelligent.
cops. And then instead of speaking up about it, they treated me like it's my fault that the cops victimized them. One of the situations in the state of Nebraska, and I believe it's also the same in the state of Colorado, if you call 911, the officer has to make a report. He has to make a written report. They didn't. On multiple occasions when I called 911, they didn't bother to make a written report. They didn't bother to report it at all.
Oh, they just called back to dispatch and said, that's Sean Swartz, crazy guy again.
Pretty much.
Yep.
But those were also, when I called 911, they were over situations where there was a definite possibility of risk of life and limb. I mean, it's not like I was calling them out of nowhere. I had to deal with actual dangerous predators with a long history of abuse. There's a lady in a green hoodie going next door. For example,
I keep forgetting. I want to put some reflective stuff on the door, and I keep forgetting to bring it.
well, if they want to stare at me like perverts, I'll blow them a kiss. But there's their entire case in Colorado, and their entire.
I should suppose that many of y'all don't know me in real life. You only know me from my internet persona. The person that I have to pretend to be to get heard. I'm talking to that lady in the tone that I talk to most people in. Whenever I go out into public, I have a recording device on me. Always. And it's on. Every time I go into pump and pantry to get a pack of cigarettes or a soda pop or something to eat, I make sure that that recording device is on and with me at all points in time. And of course, if you hear how I interact with people at Pump and Pantry, you're like, oh my God, this is not the same dude. This guy's funny as fuck. But I don't get to be that guy anymore. Because that guy gets blown off. A lot of y'all, you want to pretend that I'm blown off because I'm angry. No, I'm angry because I'm blown off. Big difference. Cause and effect. Like many of the things that I did because people abused me, people wanted to pretend that they did those things because of how I reacted. Well, excuse me, but if I am pissed off and calling the police because you assaulted me, you didn't assault me for calling the police. You have now tried to shift the timeline and make something go completely back in time or forward in time from when it happened to try to justify it and make it okay. Like people pretending that I parked behind Natalie's work in Colorado. Obviously, that happened over a year earlier, not in Colorado. It wasn't Natalie's work, it was Alicia's work, and I had been asked to go there. And of course, the evidence that we were friends at that point in time is all over my YouTube and Facebook. It's just not allowed in court because I'm not considered mentally competent because my predators call me mentally ill and it magically justifies their sins or their crimes or both.
The entire case here was all dependent upon me being schizophrenic. That's why they told doctors that I was schizophrenic. That's why they told nurses that I was schizophrenic. So far as I know, DaCosta didn't talk to any actual doctors. And Amanda Jonas, who's one of the ones in Colorado, she didn't talk to an actual doctor either. She talked to the security guard there and one of the nurses. Oh. But repeatedly, when I was trying to tell on officers, those literal officers would take me to the hospital. Those literal officers that I was.
I'm going to pause it there. In some of those cases, it wasn't those literal officers. In some of those cases, it was their coworkers. In Washington State, this happened. Now, I've got recordings on my YouTube of the literal incidents that happened. Not hearsay, not secondhand, not me just relaying the story, but the actual phone calls between me and the Tacoma Police Department where I was trying to turn in Officer Schneider. That's on my YouTube channel. There's a series. There's about 7 videos altogether. And guess what they did? When I tried to turn in Officer Schneider, they sent me to Officer Schneider. That is a safety issue and a safety risk. Now, what do these officers do when you try to turn them in? They take you to another jurisdiction and drop you off there. They take you to a hospital in another jurisdiction, lie to that hospital, and leave you there. The Tacoma Police Department did not take me to the Tacoma hospital. They took me to the next jurisdiction over where I was abused at that hospital. And then I was assaulted when they kicked me out. They didn't need to try to break my fucking arm. The security guards did that. When you try to turn in a cop, you have to take preventative measures to make sure that they don't break the law. That includes having someone go in with you in person. If you have to beg for a year and a half, obviously the people that you're asking are complete and total trash. Obviously, these people, if they're willing to allow these things to happen, are not your friends. They're not going to help you. They do not care about you. Don't believe them. Now, up in South Dakota, same thing. I was abused at a mental hospital there because of the cops multiple times. The way that they treated me was inhumane. But then again, when the cops look up on their computer and it says that you were charged with assault against a police officer, that being Waylon Lolatai, yeah, they're not going to do anything to help you. They're going to do everything to discredit you. And the hospitals will help them. The hospital staff will help them. They don't have any morality whatsoever as far as that goes. A cop said it, it must be true. In each of these situations where instead of trying to kill myself, I went to the officers that I needed to try to get help, they locked me up as if I was trying to kill myself. And I had explained to them repeatedly, I'm not trying to kill myself. It's horrible. And the situation here, when I tried to turn in 5 different times, 5 different occasions, when I tried to turn in the officers just here in Chapel, Nebraska, I was either incarcerated or sent to a nuthatch, literally by the officers I was trying to turn in. There in Tacoma, it was that officer's co-workers who had taken me to a different jurisdiction. And then in that different jurisdiction where you are being abused and treated like you're a schizophrenic and having drugs forced into you because you are trying to turn in the cops that abused you, and they say you can't do that, you're in the wrong jurisdiction. Well, I can't turn them in my jurisdiction because the only person I can turn it into is Scott DaCosta or his deputies who can't do anything. So I can't even turn it into Scott DaCosta or his deputies. These guys have literally spent 5 years fucking around and committing felonies and getting away with it by calling me schizophrenic. Literally 5 years. Let's press play again. I think we only got about 11 or 12 minutes left on this.
Trying to turn in would take me to the hospital and then give me the mentally ill tag as soon as I got there. Yeah. They did that twice here. Well, 5 times overall with Dual County Sheriff's Department, but twice in specific where they had me taken to Scotts Bluff. And 2 of the officers that were trying to intimidate me into leaving town were Jared Hahn and Cody Selhorst. When I went to try to turn them in, Jen Beebe was supposed to be there so that I could turn them in safely.
All right, I'm going to pause there just to say that I tried explaining this to my attorneys. They said, well, it's not against the law for somebody to want you to leave. It is against the law for law enforcement to attempt to intimidate me into leaving town. It is against the law for them to assault me. It is against the law for them to make a false report. These things are all illegal, and they got away with it by pretending I'm schizophrenic. Anytime that I try to turn in one of my predators, whether it's a cop or not, throughout my entire life, these people get away with their crimes by saying, well, you're the one who's mentally ill. You're mentally ill. That's a fucking insult. All you are doing at that point in time is being insulting. Mentally ill is not a diagnosis. Now, I've got 4 or 5 more of these with this lady. Some of the stuff that she talks about with Scott DaCosta and some of the other ones, like, how can she know these things and not call it in? But you hear her defeatist attitude, how it's not going to do any good, how there's only a 10% chance. Well, with one extra helper, let's say one person who gives a shit, that increases it by 1%, if that's one person willing to help. That 1% is still better than nothing. Now, isn't it? The chance of ending this, even if it's only 1%, is worth the pursuit. My case could change the laws across the entire country, and that is not a joke. You guys, a lot of y'all are mad about stuff that you're having to go through now because of COVID that the homeless people got to deal with all the time. And then there's the Boulder fire, and people are pissed off about how they're losing their homes and they're losing everything else. Well, you know what? When those homeless people that you have treated like crap for years and ignored the abuse against for years are going through that, you have no sympathy for them whatsoever. But now you want to whine? That's what you call it when we're trying to help, trying to get some sort of roof over our heads, some protection from the elements and the police and the general public who hates us. And now this general public in Boulder County that hates us is having to go through it, and they're whining. They're whining. But whining when it happens to us and we speak out. They don't want equality. They want special treatment. They don't want the homeless to have these things, but they feel that they are entitled and owed these things. You're entitled to it, but you don't want the homeless to have it? You're a piece of shit. Let's continue.
The problem is that this is according to Jen Beebe. They had called her up and told her that I had tried to reach for their gun and tried to suicide by cop. And this is a situation that Jen Beebe remembered every detail of. This is while I'm in Scottsbluff in 2019. This is over a year and a half after this incident had happened. She could remember every detail while we were in the jail in that little conference room. But then when I got out of jail and they were telling me I was court ordered to work with Jen Beebe of Region 1 and also go back and see Nicole Peralta, Jen Beebe ignored me for 6.
So let's pause for a moment. How did a situation in Chapel, Nebraska result in court cases in multiple locations in other counties? Because when I tried to turn in Scott DaCosta, they were able to manipulate people in other counties, and they were able to take me out of Dual County to another county where that other county abused me based on the words of the Dual County Sheriff's Department. It's great news, isn't it? So now I get abused in Scottsbluff. Now, when I was in Scottsbluff in December of 2019, and I was trying to turn that situation in, and the abuse and the assaults that I endured, and that was the first visit to Scottsbluff. No, second visit. I've been to Scottsbluff a grand total of 5 times, 4 or 5 times to the jail there since Natalie was killed. And of course, the lady that they had there at the time was friends with one of my abusers at the hospital there. A hospital that, by the way, I was not even allowed to go back to. There was a protection order to keep me from going to the hospital because I broke their computers. I'm proud of that. Because they were abusing me for the Dual County Sheriff's Department, in specific, Jared Hahn and Cody Selhorst, the two officers I was trying to turn in for intimidating me, not doing their jobs, and so on and so on and so on. So while I was in jail at that point in time, when they were supposed to release me, instead of releasing me, that woman had me sent to the Scottsbluff Hospital, and the cops drove me there. I needed to turn them in for assault. So when you try to turn in a cop for assault, they try to discredit you by taking you out of jurisdiction or to a mental hospital where they lie to the staff and the staff gives them what they want. That happened in Longmont, Colorado. That happened in Boulder, Colorado. That happened in Rapid City, South Dakota. That happened in Rawlins, Wyoming. When you try to turn in a bad cop, this is what you deal with. More bad cops. And a medical system that just believes anything with a badge has to say.
Months. And then at the end of the 6 months, and I recorded this, I had to.
I record everything.
There was a situation where after 6 months, I had called them up and said, hey, Jen Beebe has been ignoring me for 6 months. She's not doing her job. I can't fulfill my obligations to the courts. I'm having to go through an autism advocate, and this lady is not getting paid to do exactly the same thing that Jen Beebe was supposed to. Well, they said that they were going to investigate Jen Beebe, but nobody ever got back a hold of me. They didn't bother to try to take a report or getting any information. And then a few days later, Jen Beebe called me up and she says, oh, well, I can't remember. It was a long time ago. And that's one of the things about having somebody in my corner to help me to make the police reports when it makes a difference. Because it's not that I wasn't trying, it's that I was being outright denied that. I have photocopies of police reports that I wrote that I was able to make photocopies of, and most of the time I didn't have the ability to make photocopies.
Right.
That's the problem with false charges. It robs you
So
of all of your
the
resources.
situation got extremely out of hand, and I had to depend on people who weren't doing their jobs.
If you exhaust all the places that are established to assist people,
I will
with
keep speaking out.
with no income, etc., because you don't have $25,000 to put a retainer down for an attorney.
And
Here
there
she
you
is
go,
being
realistic again.
What are you going to do? How are you going to proceed through your life and go, I gotta let it go? I mean, you can never forget.
I don't get to call it a life.
But can you move through your life? Or are you gonna be stuck here with all this and just rehash it? Because it's gonna chew you up and spit you out.
Well, it has chewed me up and spit me out. But the other thing is that what I will have to go through for the rest of my life if I'm not able to get anything going on really makes life not worth living.
So
you know, and that's not a threat. I'm not.
No, I know that. Yeah. But can you fly under the radar?
I tried that.
Okay, but in Chapel, I mean.
In Chapel, I'm flying under the radar as best I can, but everybody knows where I'm at.
Well, yeah, it's a town of 500.
Yeah.
You know, they know everybody and what kind of dog you have and everything.
Yep.
And what you eat for breakfast a lot of times.
Yep.
So
if you walk from one end of town to the other, whether you did something wrong or not, people are going to be talking about it.
You know.
Yep. And even if they don't know what's going on, they'll pretend that they do, and they'll share it to everybody else as if they were there.
Well, and you know what? Because you have a reputation of schizophrenic behaviors, everybody's watching it. What's Crazy Sean doing now?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or
A lot of these people
derogatory
that I
or
dealt
anything.
with, I mean, they told me, hey, dude, you know what? You're probably the most sane guy that I know. You probably know more about this and that and the other than anyone else I know. You know more about homelessness than anyone else I know. You know more about living off in the woods than anyone else I know. You know more about the way that humans interact with each other than anyone I know. And that's the thing, is that those people, a lot of them were willing to come forward, but they were threatened and intimidated to begin with. I recorded conversations with a lot of these people. Those conversations still exist. I still have access to them.
Sort of. If I could get my computer to work, I could actually see what's in it. I did want to make mention that I weigh more now than I've ever weighed before. The heaviest I ever was before this year is when I was like 9 or 10. I was 5'1", 184 pounds. I am now almost 190, so close to 200 pounds. I have my six pack is gone. That is the first time since I was probably 15 that my six pack has been invisible. I gained a lot of weight while I was in jail. But also, the most weight that I ever gained prior to that, I spent 3 months up in the mountains completely ignoring the world. And in those 3 months, I gained about 30 pounds. I went from about 125 to about 165. So about 40 pounds. But, I was in the mountains for a while. There was plenty of stuff to eat up there. I mean, sure, it's Colorado and there's not a bunch of ferns and pretty ground cover like in Washington State or Virginia or a place like that, but there's still plenty of stuff that you can find to eat. All right, we'll continue again. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 spammers on right now, commenting over on the comment section. And of course, take proof. Let's hope that there's room on the phone for making one more picture. I did lower the quality of it. I think I was able to successfully do that, and it might have room for another picture as a result. So we'll take this picture here of those spammers. That way I don't get treated like I'm schizophrenic for saying it. And then what do we do to spammers? Let's see. Hide user on this channel. 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 Now, because it's on this video and we don't want to lose it, let's show the evidence. I saved the evidence. It's right there. Come on, focus. Well, you can see the dots that are on there, and you can see, I'm sure, on the live chat replay that they're not there anymore. So, I don't know. It'd be nice if I had a little adjuster on the side of this thing so I could focus it myself. That's a lot of the problem with the autofocus feature, is that you need to be able to turn it off and focus yourself on something like this. All right, now we're almost done with this video, and I'm sorry I keep interrupting it. It's an hour long almost, and I've already made it almost 2 hours long. So let's listen to the last 8 minutes or so.
The thing is that there are situations as a result of what happened that I can't get past, and people don't understand that. Like, my credit score is now 98. I can't recover from that. There's also the fact that I can't get into housing now, and I can't recover from that. There's the fact that, between not being able to go to housing and having a credit score of 98, I'm stuck homeless.
No, not necessarily. You haven't used the HART program, have you?
I haven't, so far as I know. I'm pretty sure that me and Penny are working on that.
Because the HART program will cover like part of your rent, part of your utilities, or it'll cover your rent and you have to pay your utilities. And it'll do that till you are eligible for Section 8, which are you sanctioned for life or just for 5 years or for what?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah, but the other thing is that 2 years, they're not allowed to do that. They have to allow me there's a special name for it, they told me, but it's basically
An appeal. But
yes, but it's not an appeal. Before they can kick me out, they have to have a special type of meeting that I'm allowed to be involved in before they're allowed to kick me out.
they probably scheduled it and you didn't show up because you didn't get notified.
Probably that happens often.
Yes.
And that's the thing about working with Cindy is like Cindy has done that in similar situations to multiple people. I mean, the situation here in Sydney, there was protests that were large enough protests in Sydney, Nebraska that they were on the news in Omaha, Nebraska, and they specifically spoke about Cindy and Nancy. Now, I never had a problem with Nancy. My problem was with Cindy because Cindy was the one who was supposed to get me my paperwork. She's the one that repeatedly did not.
Yeah.
There's also the fact
She's a bitch.
I agree.
So, and
You knowing these people makes it a very different scenario, though, because for you knowing these people, it's not me just blowing smoke up your
it's
ass.
not you going, poor me, they screwed me over. Yeah, I know they do. Now, they do have legitimate things like, a gal moved her boyfriend in and one of his kids, and she did not report it to housing. She got sanctioned for 5 years, which she should have, because he was working, her rent didn't go up, all these things. 2 more people living in this place, it should have gone up. She needed to be sanctioned. And I kept warning her, you need to report that. You need to report that. And I
Now, obviously, she's talking about Cindy. Obviously, this is something that Cindy was doing something wrong, and this woman was letting Cindy know, hey, you are doing something wrong. This is what you need to do. And Cindy didn't listen, didn't care. She still needs to be sanctioned.
documented it. And so when they did sanction her, she's like, I said, look, how many times did I tell you, you needed to report the fact that he was living with you?
I did the right thing, and I reported it like I was supposed to in situations that I was supposed to. And that's
Sometimes that doesn't make a difference, but
it doesn't.
okay.
But sometimes it does. And
Yes.
like when you were saying, there's only about a 10% chance that this
I mean,
will
I'm not
actually
being
do anything.
generous there.
I was about to say, I figure it's more around a 1 or 2% chance.
Yeah.
But with every person who is willing to help, that increases it. Now, the other thing is, I'm not asking people to be dishonest. If people are going to lie, they're not helping me. I don't want their help because lying is not help.
Yeah.
And that's a complicated situation to explain to people who think that they're acting in my best interest. There are some people right after Natalie died that they told little white lies thinking that it was going to help out the situation. But the thing is, they claimed that they were there for situations that they weren't there for. So they were outright lying, thinking just like when Natalie, was on heroin, and she figured if she told a little white lie that it wouldn't be a big major deal and everything would be fine and she'd go back to her life. Well, she told that little white lie, and I'm still dealing with the consequences of it. So when these people were wanting to tell little white lies to try to make me look like a better person or so on and so forth, and the way the media was painting me, I was nice to them about it, but I let them know, hey, you need to tell the truth or you're doing more harm than good. A lot of folks wanted to come forward and weren't allowed. There were several of them. Now, this is a Boulder Police exclusive thing. Boulder Police get away with more than any other police department. They can go and harass homeless people, and if they commit a crime against one homeless person.
I'm going to pause there. I've got a lot of evidence of human trafficking through Boulder, Colorado and Denver, Colorado. It's all the way up to the I-90 interchange. It goes all the way up to Bozeman, Montana. It goes through Cheyenne, Wyoming. It goes east to St. Louis. It goes west to California. It goes south to Amarillo, Texas. Now, the people that need to be talked to about this, the people who know, I've got some of them recorded on my YouTube here. The admissions that they have made on my YouTube channel can be used to subpoena them to court. And in some of these cases, like in the case of Jay, he talks about some of the bodies that ended up around Boulder. See, he used to be a drug dealer, and he told people, hey, you know what? It's not about the money. It's about getting ripped off. So I'm going to leave it to you to get the money back however you wish, and you can keep it. Now, when it comes to the human trafficking stuff, that is a whole different ballgame. I mean, that's something that I haven't even gotten started on showing her. But there's a lot of videos on here with witnesses, and also some of the perpetrators themselves admitting to these things. So, yeah, it's probably a good idea to go back through my videos.
And there's multiple homeless people who try to turn in those officers. They arrest the witnesses.
Well, they're homeless people, so
nobody cares.
all right. Well, unfortunately, it is 5 minutes till 9.
Yes, ma'am. I did bring some stuff in here that I wanted to show you about the appointments that I made it to, but
All right. This is just the wrap up. We're done with this fucking video. Thank goodness. I shouldn't have to post this stuff up. I shouldn't have to put this stuff on YouTube. I shouldn't have to put this stuff on Facebook.